Our capstone presentation is on opioids.
My name is Nicholas Ciancio. I'm a student at Cuyahoga Falls High School.
My name is Benjamin Chakowski. I'm a student at Talmadge High School. What we did in our research project was researching about opioid addiction and what are some of the big factors that come into role that has escalated the opioid use into an epidemic here in the U.S.
The methods we use for our research include PubMed, PubChem, and NCBI research articles. We also received some help from some professionals as well.
One of the professionals was Dr. Amanda Price, who is a behavioral neuroscience at the NIH.
Another one of our mentors was Dr. Dewey Kim. He's a computational biologist at the Broad Institute.
And finally, Dr. Claire Wood, and she specializes in substance use disorders.
So the sections of our paper included opioid chemistry, genes and receptors, addiction and its effect, the social aspect, and alternatives to opioids. So our first section was opioid chemistry. Opioids are derived from opium found in poppy plants. The opium is found in the stem of the poppy plant. They can be synthesized into many different types of opioid drugs, the most common being morphine.
One of the biggest parts about opioid addiction is that when the opioids enter the body, they will bind to the receptors. Binding to the receptors will give us these side effects, which we will talk about later. But these receptors are actually encoded by several genes found in our body. The first couple of genes that we will talk about are the DRD2, DRD3, and DRD4. And these genes will code for our opioid receptors, which are listed as the mu receptor, the kappa receptor, and the delta receptor. Our next set of genes, which are going to be the OPRM1, OPRD1, and OPRK1, code for what are called our dopamine receptors. The dopamine receptors can be broken down into dopamine receptor 1 and dopamine receptor 2. And even those can be broken down into subcategories under the dopamine receptor 1, which is going to be D1 and D5. And finally, in our dopamine receptor 2, are D1, D2, D3, and D4. Our final two genes shown on the board are BDNF and NRXN3, and these genes increase our use for opioids. While they don't code for the receptors, they will increase the use of opioids. So when the opioids enter our body and give us the side effects, they can be positive along with negative. The positive effects are the euphoric feeling, or the high that people feel when the opioids finally bind to the receptors. We also have our pain relief and mental stimulation. One of the big things that opioids do is actually take the pain that you are feeling, and it will make it feel like you don't have any pain whatsoever.
There's also some negative side effects to opioid abuse, one of those being respiratory depression that makes your breathing slower and your lungs act not as strong. There's also low blood pressure and fatigue. So overdose rates have been steadily increasing in the past decade or so. The most recent data we have is from 2016, and there were roughly 56,000 overdoses in the United States, and 19,000 of those being opioid-related overdoses. Rates have been steadily increasing, but there's also been some new ways to help attempt to cure addiction. Those modern alternatives being CBD oil or cannabidiol oil. It relieves pain by releasing pain-blocking chemicals into the bloodstream, and also acupuncture. It's a needling method that you needle points of pressure, and it stimulates your nerves and helps relieve pain.
What's next that we need to do is still continue the opioid crisis as it is an epidemic. With that epidemic reaching really high numbers, we need to be able to unaddict those people that have actually become addicted. And this can be done with multiple herbs and other alternatives that researchers are studying as of right now. And we still need to look for more ways to find alternatives to pain relief. So as the opioid addiction is continuing to rise in cases still to this day, especially with the use of heroin and other illegal drugs in the U.S., Nick and I have decided to still monitor the crisis and see if there is anything new that is coming about out of it. We also want to try and learn more about the genes and what they do. Again, while we do know that multiple of the genes code for the receptors, and some of them increase their use for opioids, there's still a lot more that we can come to find out about it. Although if we were to do this research project again, we would research Alzheimer's as it is both of an interest to us. Actually moving forward on with our lives and outside of the research project, I'm going to be studying at The Ohio State University, and I will be majoring in biomedical engineering, and that is something that I aspire to become.
And as for me this fall, I will be attending Stark State College to help work on my pre-med major. I would also like to become a biomedical engineer.
There you go.
Was that one better?